When it comes to video game collecting, I have always felt that it's a good thing to be ahead of the curve. Seeing what's coming down the pipe before it's actually coming down the pipe and bearing down on you, kind of like the Xbox 360 market is doing right now, and people are freaking out, FOMO, and you might be a little too late to the party as it pertains to the Xbox 360. So where do you need to be?
I think you need to be a generation ahead. So now is the time to collect for the PlayStation 4 because Xbox Series and PlayStation 5 are out. That's the new hot thing.
Yep.
So PS4 games, people are getting rid of them. You can find them everywhere.
Yep.
They're dirt cheap. There's so many amazing games out there. The library is massive. And in a couple years, these prices will start to go up like they did with the 360. That's just how things go.
Yep.
I remember a few years ago when like the Wii closed and all that stuff, and then the Wii prices started to go up,
Yep.
and Wii U and all that. So it's going to happen. This is what happens with video games. Things go, but now is the time because things are super cheap.
Yeah, and right now, you already mentioned it, but stuff on the PS4 is so plentiful, and it's so cheap. Whether you're looking at pawn shops, thrift stores, garage sales, people are getting rid of this stuff in bunches. Now, you do see a lot of sports titles, and a lot of stuff that maybe isn't worthy of collecting, or maybe stuff that you don't even want to play because they're annual release type of things, but there are a ton of great games in the library. So what should people right now for the PS4 be keeping their eyes peeled for when they're out there looking?
I think initially keep your eyes peeled for games that have been delisted from the store. So what's nice about collecting for the PS4 right now is that the online's still available. You can still download a lot of things, but a lot of games are already delisted. Like we just picked up Deadpool for the PS4. That game's no longer available, and that game is starting to climb in price on the PS4 already.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going crazy on everything else, but
I think it's like $80 on the PS4, and that game actually didn't come out on the PS4 that long ago.
no, it didn't. It's a newer game, but you can't digitally get it on the PS4. But we found it physically. We got it for like maybe $1. We got a giant stuff, so I don't know how much it was exactly, but look out for that. There's also a ton of other games like Godzilla. There's like a Turtles game that is delisted that's going for a lot. And those games, since they're not listed, are just going to keep going up in price.
Yep.
And I don't think a lot of people know about that, so you might find them out in the wild for dirt cheap.
Yeah, just keep an eye, I would say, on those Activision superhero type of games, because I know the Amazing Spider-Man 2.
The second one, yes.
Yep, it's going up. It's in that $40, $50 range. You mentioned the Turtles, Mutants in Manhattan, I think, with the red font. And these are games that people, like you mentioned, don't know what they're worth, and so you will see them at your local pawn shop.
I think like the Marvel Ultimate Alliance games, like 1 and 2, were available on the PlayStation Network, and now they're not. Obviously, the third one's out, but that's something to keep your eyes peeled. And then also like all like the limited run, the strictly limited, all those types of games that were smaller releases that were physical. You could probably still find those cheap at garage sales, thrift stores, pawn shops. But those are going to go up eventually because people are going to be like, oh, there's only 1,000 of these?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Well, yeah, I think of games like Nex Machina that's right in that $40, $50 range. I think that will be a big one.
And that's one of my favorite games on PlayStation.
And the stuff kind of later in limited runs, they started releasing some of those games at like Best Buy and things like that. So you will find some of those games. We have found some of those games at our local pawn shops and things like that.
Which is super cool. And what's so wild is you can go to literally every garage sale. We find stacks of games. And obviously you already mentioned there's sports titles.
Yeah.
But you could get like common games, common third-person, first-person shooters, action-adventure, platformer games, RPGs for super cheap. And that's just really nice. And those games are super common. But what's wild is for the 360, for example, those common games are starting to spike.
Yeah.
So maybe just if you are interested in maybe picking up, I don't know, Borderlands 3, for example. I love Borderlands, so I'm just going to talk about it. You could get that game for probably $1 or a couple dollars. But you never know when the store closes and people start getting FOMO in a couple years, maybe 5 years. That game might spike again, and for no reason, because it was everywhere.
Yeah, and there's just so many other great games that I don't know what's going to happen from a value standpoint. But even just the PlayStation exclusives, your Spider-Mans, your Last of Us, your Last of Us 2, your Uncharted games, the God of Wars, things like that even not looking at a monetary value, but just games that you maybe didn't get around to playing.
Great games,
Or maybe you were an Xbox person during this generation and you're like, man, I missed out on some of those exclusives. You can find the consoles dirt cheap. You can find the controllers dirt cheap. People are offloading this stuff. As far as a console goes, you know, this isn't a buying guide, but there were various versions of the console. But the PS4 Pro, it's the nicest model, but you're still on the original model. I'm on the second model. No issues. They still work great.
I still rock my original, and what's really cool is if maybe you're late to the party or you're thinking about it it's a great home entertainment console too. Like, obviously, it can play video games, but then it can play DVDs, it can play Blu-rays. If you get the upgraded model, I think it can play 4K movies, which is incredible because newer consoles and newer gaming things are being released discless.
Yeah.
So this is like one of the last generations where it will support physical media. Obviously, the PS5 does have a disc drive, but will the PS6? I don't know. And the new Xbox, there's options that don't have disc drive.
Same thing. PS5 even has an option without a disc drive. And all of this that we're talking about, I want to keep mostly focused on the games. You bring up a good point that, yes, it can be your media system. You can stream on it, watch Blu-rays, DVDs. But if you don't have a PS4 and you have a PS5, you can play all your hard copy PS4 games on your PS5.
Backwards compatibility, which is super cool.
I think that adds value.
It adds so much value, and there's a lot of games, like you brought up, like Last of Us, and all these like amazing Sony PlayStations, but those games are getting re-released again for the PlayStation 5, so the PS4 versions of them are becoming even cheaper because people are like, oh, I want like the upgraded version. They still look and play great on the PS4. I don't, graphics and all that stuff doesn't bother me. Like the original Last of Us, you could probably get that for super cheap. Last of Us 2, get for super cheap. There's so many amazing freaking games, and they are literally everywhere. And I know someone's going to comment and they're going to be like, well, most of the games you need internet, or most of the games you need downloads. That's why we're saying now is the time, because all this stuff is still open. Now, there are a ton of games that don't require internet, though. A lot of single-player campaign games, you can just put the disc in and play. Now, there will be probably updates or things that they added, but some games just work without the internet, so that is really nice.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think there's this misinformation out there that all the games aren't on the disc. That is true in some cases, but you'd be surprised how many PS4 games are actually all on the disc. It is a thing. Patches and updates, that's a whole nother story. That is where this generation, it's going to be very curious to see what does happen when the FOMO kicks in for this generation, is what is the collectability and value of these games going to do? I mean, I don't foresee the PS4 store closing down anytime soon. I mean, hell, the PS3 is still open. The Vita is still open. I know they did shut down the PSP stuff, but they did threaten to close it, but then they didn't. So from a long-term collectability standpoint, I don't know. I think the jury's still out there because there are going to be games that are going to be useless at some point in time. But if you're just wanting to play games, the PS4 is so right for the picking right now. I would even like loop in, although that's not the point of this episode, is even Xbox One stuff.
Xbox
just
One.
This whole generation as a whole is where you want to be right now because no one else is.
Yeah, and this is where you can play games and collect for games for super cheap because not everybody can have this, and not everybody wants to go out and buy a $60 cartridge. So maybe you only have $20 to spend on video games. You could go out and get a stack of PS4 games for $20, and that's awesome. And what's awesome about this generation too is all this stuff's still open, so you can get all the updates and stuff. And then these games are longer too, so there's more investment you will have in these games too. So you can get Red Dead 2 for probably $5, and that's a 200-hour game.
And I think another thing worth noting is most of the stuff from this generation still feels fresh and new. We haven't, it's been diminishing returns is what I would call it for these console leaps. The further we get along in the lifespan, that leap from PS1 era to PS2 was like holy cannoli. Then from PS2 to like 360 and PS3 was amazing, but that's got less and less over time. And there's so many PS4 games, even if you aren't playing them in 4K, that you put on and it doesn't feel super dated. It doesn't feel like you're a generation behind.
It still looks amazing, and I know some people are very strict on that kind of stuff, so you don't have to worry about that for PS4 games. These are fantastic. And going back to like the long-term collecting, I feel like now's the time to pick up some of these games, and it's going to be wild to see, like in, 10, 20 years when the store does close, are you going to have nostalgic for the games you were playing online that you can't no longer get? Warzone, Fortnite, all this stuff that, like, it's super hot right now, Rocket League. But, like, are you going to be able to play that in 20 years when the servers does close and does shut down and all that stuff? So now's the time to maybe really enjoy playing those games. Even if you just have a sliver of an idea that you want to try something, now's the time to try it.
And the cherry on top, they are still releasing PS4 games.
Yes, brand new.
So it's still a relevant console. You're still getting releases on the PS4 that are on the PS5. And the gap between the quality is it's there for sure. The PS5 version is the optimized way to play the game, but they're not unplayable on the PS4, and it's not like you're just completely blown away at the gap in quality.
And what's really cool too about the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One is they've also released a ton of collections. You know, collections of game series and games like God of War collection, Mega Man, Borderlands collection. Like, so you can go out and find these collections and get like a one disc that has 3 or 4 games, and that disc could be like $2. So
Robert's homeboy, Nathan Drake collection.
Yeah, dude, exactly. I love him and his designer jeans. But like the Uncharted games, I think a lot of the Uncharted games actually, you don't need internet to play them, though those are all on the disc. A lot of single player campaigns. I think I was reading like Yakuza's all on the disc. So if you don't have internet, you can still go out and find these games for cheap and play them without internet. But then also, if you have internet, you can get the updates. You can stream, you can Netflix, you can use Spotify, you can do everything you want on a PS4. Now is the time. Dude, every time I go out somewhere, I see games. I think the value of even a PS4, even if you had a PS5, I've even read in our comments, people are like, my PS4 is hooked up in my bedroom, it's my media console. And I can play games on it. As opposed to a Roku stick or something. Man, we've seen PS4s at garage sales for $40, $50. That's such a steal for what the console can do. It's insane. It's a powerhouse. But that's because people upgrade to the newest and greatest thing, and they're like, well, let's just get rid of this. So for cheap collectors and people that are on a budget, now is the time. Don't be freaking out about playing the new stuff or freaking out about 360 stuff. Play this stuff. Pennies on the dollar.
I think that's where you need to be. That's why our collection is the size it is. We were going nuts on the 360 and the PS3, like even before we started the channel, because it was like, well, I'm gonna get 20 games versus one brand new game all day schlong. Now we've just moved ahead of generation.
This is what it's going to happen. In 10 years, we're going to be like, oh, see, we told you so. We're going to be freaking out, and we're going to have an awesome stack of PS4 games that we got for 50 cents. You know? So now's the time. Keep your eyes peeled. Just if you ever think you're going to want to play a game and you find it for cheap, pick it up. And then maybe just throw it in and install it and do the updates and everything just so you have it. And then also, PlayStation Network is still around. You can still get monthly free games. You can still get play online. Like, I think it's the best of both worlds. You get the new and the old for cheap.
Speaking of the best of both worlds and now being the time, now is the time for a beer review.
Ooh.
And we've got a very unique one today. And it kind of tastes like something that might have been in your lunchbox when you went to kindergarten.
Yeah, this is the best of both worlds. Peanut butter and jelly. But in a beer. This is a peanut butter and mixed berry jelly sour by Barntown Brewery. A peanut butter and jelly sour.
It's
what?
Bizarre. I will say that you could blindly taste this and you'd be like, oh, that tastes like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
It tastes exactly like that.
Is it weird? Yes. Is it delicious? Yes. How is it a beer? I don't know.
Yeah, dude.
But how does Barntown keep making these sours that taste exactly like what they say on the can?
I think they're wizards. Like, this is it's a PBJ-inspired gluten-free sour with peanuts, strawberries, blueberries, blackberries, and raspberries. So a lot of different fruit in here. You get the initial taste of the jam, the jelly, and you're like, ooh, that's good. And then you get this thickness of the peanut butter that rolls over your tongue, but it's not overpowering. And this is so good, but so bizarre. But also, like, I don't know if I could have more than one. Because it is, like, sweet.
It's very rich.
But it's good. Like, this is, like, enough. This is a beer. Barntown's a great brewery for people that don't like beer. Because you can be like, you like PB&J? Here you go.
It's a destination spot. If you ever come to the Des Moines, Iowa area, you got to check out Barntown Brewery. They've got great food as well. And they've also got beers that aren't wacky. They're staples. They've got some great IPAs, some great lagers, some great pilsners, great stouts as well. But I would say their specialty is these weird, bizarre sours. I was going to say stouts. They do have weird and bizarre stouts as well. But their sours, they've had green apple, blueberry muffin, all these, and you never know when you go into the tap room what there's going to be going on. And they typically always taste exactly like what the can says.
It's insane. I've had like a lemon bar one that was delicious. I've had a sour green apple one that was delicious. The caramel apple.
Yeah, there was a strawberry shortcake. Strawberry cheesecake.
The cheesecake ones were incredible. Dude, they made Ecto Cooler one time that was a sour. It's and then they just have IPAs and stuff on top of that. But this is wild.
Yeah, this is wild. The PS4 is wild. The PS4 is an amazing machine. It's an amazing console with an amazing, robust library. And, you don't have to listen to us, but I do know that people are freaking out and overpaying for Xbox 360 games, and it's because you missed the boat when you didn't strike the iron while it was hot, and right now, that thing is sizzling on the PS4 in my mind, because cheap games everywhere. I know a local pawn shop of ours, 3 for $10, and, for sports games, that's not a great deal. But for other titles, that's amazing.
Yeah, but that's so like if you go in there 3 for $10, you could get Borderlands 3, Far Cry 5, and freaking another game for $10, and those are awesome games.
Yeah.
Those are full amazing games. I've gotten a ton of PS4 games from the pawn shop.
Oh, I bet you over half of both of our collections are from the pawn shop.
Yeah, so
And garage sales.
I've maybe bought a few brand new PS4 games, but most of my PS4 collection has been garage sales, thrift stores, pawn shops for dirt cheap, and I'm loving the games, and they work and play great.
And I know the pawn shops in our area are great with accessories too, and external hard drives, controllers, so you don't even need to buy new controllers all the time. And I love the console, and I really think right now is the time to strike. Let us know in the comment section below if you agree. Are you going hammer time on the PS4 or maybe even the Xbox One? And we'd love to chat about it. As always, we appreciate you tuning in, subscribing to the channel, and we will catch you on the next episode of Gaming Off the Grid. Oh yeah!